Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. So, what are we going to talk about today? Oh, wait. I know. We're going to talk about how to structure a non-structured hat. But first, let's go over here and say good morning to Barb. Good morning, Barb. Let's see. There's somebody else in here. Say hello. Everybody have a good week? I know I did. I had a lot going on, some family crisis, but that's been resolved. Getting ready for a craft event next Saturday. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Um, and of course, prepping for today's conversation, which is about dad hats. These unstructured dad hats. Yeah. How do you hoop these? Barb says her week was great. That's awesome. So, what do we do with an unstructured hat? You know, I got my stuff over here, hats and such. With a structured hat, it's easy. You put it on the hoop, it'll stitch, toot toot toot, easy peasy. But with a structured hat, the thing doesn't want to sit on that hoop right. So what do? Well, we're going to structure our structured hat. Oh, look who's joined us today. Good morning, Jeff. How are you? Jeff, I don't know if you're aware, but today we're going to talk about how to structure an unstructured hat to get it on the hoop, to make it easier to stitch. So, what do you need? What do you need to do this? You need your hat. You need your hat backing. I use a 3-ounce tearaway backing. It's pretty standard for hats. Oh, you can get it on a roll where you can cut off your own length. It comes in a pre-cut of 16 by 4 inches or 8 by 4 inches. What else do you need? Oh, we're going to use some temporary fabric spray adhesive. Now, there's a lot of different brands out there. There's the 505, this KK100, just anything that has a temporary sticky so that it's repositionable. And you can't see it over here, but I have a spray box. You want to do that because you don't want all that overspray to land on whatever is surrounding. Okay, so how to structure an unstructured hat. Well, first thing we need to do is we need to realize, and I don't know if you can see this, there we go. An unstructured hat does not have the same amount of stitchable top to bottom space. In fact, if you look here, do you see where the stitching is here, the vent holes? That is probably your max. You really don't want to go any higher than those vent holes. Um, that's because the hat starts to curve back to conform to the top of your head. Of course, we have Adam Fuller, Jeff's son, who has made a a skill has become the teacher of hat construction. Um, and I watch his videos so that we can see how the hat is actually made. And of course, this one has no buckram in it, so it's not stiff at all. That's what we need to do to make a better surface to stitch. We're going to structure this hat. So, how do I do that? First thing I do is I take a simple sheet of the hat backing in a 4 by 8, and I'm going to fold it because remember, we don't have that same amount of space that we have in a structured hat. I'm going to fold up about an inch. Okay? Just going to fold it nice and tight. And then I'm going to spray on the backing, on the stabilizer, I'm going to spray some temporary spray adhesive. Give the can a little shake. Little spray. Did you hear that? Spray. Set it aside. Okay, so now it's all sticky. Now, on the inside of the hat, pull the sweatband down. Yeah, get that out of the way. Take the sticky side of the sticky side of the stabilizer and place it under that hat band area, that sweatband. It's going to get a little tricky. I'm going to try to do this on camera. Basically, what you want to do is you want to tuck this stabilizer up into the hat area. And then you want to smooth it in place. Look at that. Can you see that? This hat is no longer extremely floppy. No. It now has some structure. Not as much structure as our buckram structured hat. Of course, this one still has its cardboard insert, but still, has more structure here. But we have some decent structure. Make sure it's smooth. I got a little bubble here. Okay. Yeah. Here's another one. Still all floppy. Yep. Still all floppy. Which one do you think's going to sit on the hoop better? And we're talking the round cylinder hoop that you use for stitching hats. Yep, this is the one. Now, when you're ready to stitch it on hat, when you're ready to put it on the machine, don't forget to use another layer of backing on your hoop. You're going to place backing on your hoop like you normally would. I don't suggest that you put a second layer in here. This is your hat. It's now structured. This is your backing for your hoop. It's going to help support on the hoop. And you're going to hoop this hat just like you would any other. You're going to pull the sweatband over and forward. You're going to put it on the machine or on the hoop. You're going to clip it in place. Remember this, the teeth on the band needs to go in the seam. Good morning, Cindy. How was your ride today? Did you go far? Cindy rides her bicycle Saturday mornings. So you're going to make sure that it goes in, the teeth of the band goes in your seam. And you can see, again, we have some nice structure here. It's going to give you the support you need to stitch this hat on the machine. Easy peasy, right? God, that didn't take long at all. Shall we do it again? Look at that. 20-mile ride. Nice. I used to ride bicycle. Yep. I used to ride about 15 miles 2-3 times a week, but that was when I was much younger. That was when I didn't have my vertigo issues. I have a tendency to fall over now. So again, just to recap, we're going to take a 4x8 piece of hat backing. We're going to fold up one edge up approximately 1 inch. We're going to spray it with a temporary spray adhesive, and then we're going to tuck it into the hat underneath the sweatband. Tuck it into the hat underneath the sweatband. Anybody have any questions on this yet? Oh, Jeff has a question. He does have a thought. Jeff, I'm going to go back for just a second. Woody wants to know about how many hats per can of spray. I'm not going to take a guess, but I'm going to say there's a good 100 hats in here. It's, you don't use a lot. It's just kind of a dust thing. Hope that helps. Going back to Jeff now. Jeff says, I read on the internet that if a hat is structured, you don't need backing. Well, yeah, I've read that too. But I'm a firm believer in backing, in stabilizer. In fact, think of stabilizer like the foundation to your house. Every house has got a foundation, as either cement or brick, uh, even pylons. You're welcome, Woody. Um, but it's got a foundation. What that foundation does is it holds the house stable so that it doesn't swing around or shift. Because everything shifts. In our embroidery machines, everything shifts. Start stitching, and the machine starts shaking, and the needles are going up and down, and everything is shifting. But you want to minimize that. And you can't minimize it if the fabric you're stitching on, whether it be a hat or a flat, is shifting around. The stabilizer acts as a foundation to your embroidery. It will physically, it's in the hoop, right? Gosh, I wish I had one of my other hoops here. It's in the hoop. You're going to put your fabric on top of that. Now you have a backing and a fabric. And the first stitch is going to connect the two. It's going to add to that stability. And yes, the structured hats are already pretty firm, but you're not adding, the stabilizer is not to add structure to the hat, it's to add a foundation to the stitch out. So if you remove the stabilizer, you remove that foundation. Now, you could probably adjust your digitizing to accommodate that change. You could probably make some changes to the design file to accommodate it. But wouldn't it be just simpler if you just use the foundation? Witty Cindy wants to know what kind of hoop you are using. Okay. So my thought is stabilizer for everything. I use backing on everything. It flat or hat, because I want that foundation. Oh, Jeff wants to know what type of cap backing I recommend. As I stated earlier, I use a 3-ounce tearaway hat backing. Now, it's just slightly lighter than cardstock. If you're familiar with cardstock, it has about the same weight. But again, it tears away. So that makes it easier to remove after the stitching. Cindy Woody says he uses a standard SWF hat hoop. Wanted to know if you had any other questions regarding that. Oh, because she wants to know why he needs a spray adhesive for his caps. Well, as we said, for his unstructured hats, his dad hats, can you add 2 lighter weight Oh, good question, Jeff. The thing about using two layers, two lighter weight layers. Let's see if I can find, because I just tore the one I had, the spare. All right. So let's say these are not 3 ounces. Let's say these are your standard 1.5, 2 ounce tearaways. It's too light. It's too light to support the hat. It's not going to handle the stitching. It's not going to handle the weight of the thread. So you think, oh, well, if one is good, two is better. The only problem with that is that they slide. Okay. Yeah, that first stitch is going to secure them, but there's still going to be some bounce and some shifting. I I'm a strong believer in using the right tools for the job. If hat backing is a 3 ounce tearaway stabilizer, then that's what I'm going to use, a 3 ounce tearaway stabilizer. If I were stitching a flat of under 8,000 stitches in a 4x4 area, I would use the tearaway, the 2 ounce tearaway on the flat, but not on my caps. Use the tools that are made for the job. Would you use a hammer to remove a pipe under the sink? Okay, there might be an extreme reason to use a hammer on the pipe underneath the sink. But again, I believe in using the tools that are made for the job. While we're here, I did want to talk about one other thing really quick. Oh, let's go back here. Cindy said in an earlier comment, Woody wanted to know how many cans, or how many sprays in a can per cap. Um, yeah, Woody, what do we? The question is, why? Is there something else we can help you with regarding the how many sprays in a can? How many caps in a spray can? How did that go? I know. All right, I'm going on to Jeff. Jeff, do you use just the amount of stabilizer to cover the design? I use in a dad hat, in a floppy dad hat. Let's go back. Okay. So in a floppy dad hat, because it's got a shorter profile, it's got a lower profile, and because what I'm doing is trying to give it support, I'm only going to give support in the 8 inches across where the bill area is. Now, on the machine, if my design file that I'm going to stitch on the front of this hat is only in the center, I will probably use, just another 8 ounces, or another 8 inch sheet of backing. But if I'm going over to the left or right of center, or if it's going to go across the whole front area, I will use, putting it together, a 16-inch length of hat backing, of cap stabilizer, just to give that extra support. All right, let's go back here for a second. Woody says, Cindy, just following on with the lesson, I fought a few unstructured hats that I've done, and I ended up with mismatches between the fill and the outline. Oh, registration issues. Still pretty new. Watching lots of trial and error. And yes, Woody, I use the spray on the backing, to secure it to the inside of the hat. And you know, you're going to find that you're going to use that temporary spray for a whole lot more than just unstructured hats. It's one of my tools in my sewing room. Just a can of temporary fabric adhesive. Okay. Do, do, do. Jeff, did that answer your question about the stabilizer? Are there any other questions? Cindy has a question for Jeff. Can you address using adhesive for caps? Is it necessary? That's the question on the YouTube side. I know it did. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for the feedback. I appreciate your um, comment. Um, I know the question was asked to Jeff if he thought it was necessary to use adhesive in structured hats. My opinion is I don't need the adhesive for a structured hat, but I do use it when I am adding structure to a dad hat. So while we're waiting for Jeff to answer Cindy's question, excuse me, Cindy mentioned that she doesn't use adhesive for hooping hats. Cindy, I don't use adhesive for hooping structured hats. And I don't use adhesive for hooping unstructured hats. I use the adhesive strictly to secure the lining, the backing, to the inside of the dad hat before I um, before I actually hoop it on the hoop to go on the machine. Jeff says some people use it, some people use it, some do. If you're new, try it, see if it works for you. Personally, I don't. And Barb doesn't use adhesive for any hat types. And Jeff's right. Experiment. Um, if you don't already have something in your stock, buy a bunch of cheap hats to practice on. In my opinion, if you're new to embroidery, the hardest garment to embroider is a hat. Are you using it for design issues? I think this needs to be clarified. Okay, let's try this again. We want to add structure to this floppy dad hat. To do that, I take a piece of hat stabilizer. I fold it up about an inch because we have considerably less space up here, and I use the adhesive on the backing to secure it to the inside of the hat so that it doesn't slip around. Okay. If I were hooping just a standard structured hat, no. I put the backing on the hoop, pull the sweatband forward, and hoop the hat. I do use spray adhesive on backings for flats when I'm doing knits. And I do that to keep the knit from shifting and stretching in the hoop. I use spray adhesive if I'm using an odd shaped piece that cannot be fully hooped but needs to sit on top of the stabilizer. I'll use the spray adhesive there. Um, I also use straight pins. I don't like using sticky back stabilizer because it's almost too sticky, but the spray adhesive is not too heavy. So, yes, Cindy, I'm spraying for the stability of the stabilization. Stabilization. Yes, again, for knits, I don't want that knit to shift in the hoop, and knits do that. They stretch. I don't have a knit handy. I was working on some mask earlier, but this is a knit, and it will stretch and it will shift um, under the needle. So I use the spray to secure the fabric to the stabilizer so that it doesn't overly shift. Um, or an item that can't be hooped properly, say it's a corner of a collar. Um, we'll go back. Sorry, Cindy. We'll go back to that in just a moment. But if I use spray adhesive for things that don't fit properly in the collar, Cindy was mentioning that Woody's issues were design issues, that his logos are not staying together. He's having registration issues. Just to clarify, Woody, a registration issue is where you've got two two edges of embroidery that come together, but in your case, things are shifting, so they are out of place or away from each other. Um, And Cindy's right. That goes back to the design. You want to make sure that the design has been properly digitized. So if there's some overlap to compensate for gapping, you want to make sure that the design, especially for hats, is stitched center up and out. You want to make sure that your hooping is secure. Um, we can go over hooping. I think we did some hooping, but we can do that again. And you're right. Cindy's right. Her point is that even if you spray and your design is not good for his cap, it's still not going to stay in registration. You're exactly right. Um, when you have a registration issue, there are things you need to look for. Look at your design file. Stitch it flat. Does it lay properly when you stitch it flat? Watch the stitch out. Is it stitching bottom up and center out? Um, Make sure your hooping is tight. When you put the hat in the hoop, if you can grab the hat by the bill and shake it and the ring does not move, then you've got a nice secured hat. Make sure that the teeth are in the seam. Follow that, excuse me, follow that around. Imagine that there's a bill that comes all the way around, and your teeth should follow that same line all the way around on both sides. There are some that just make sure that it's straight from bill edge, from bill corner to bill corner, and they do okay with that. Personally, in my experience, I found that if I can have my teeth follow that edge all the way around, I just feel that it gives me a better secured hoop, um, better secure hooping in my hat. Woody, Cindy wants to know if you're having a digitizer make your logos. Digitizing is a whole different animal. In fact, since we're getting close to the end here, I wanted to let all of you know that next week I have, he says it stitches great on structured hats. Then, then we need to give your dad hat some structure. I'm going to step back for a moment. One thing I wanted to um, One thing I wanted to share with you before we go on to our ending here. hats have profiles. This is a high profile hat. This is what I use for testing. That's because the majority of the hat designs that I digitize are for high profile hats. But I want you to note this profile, we're going to have a half inch at the bottom, which means that we have about 2.5 inches here of stitchable area. That's good. But you know what? You don't have that with a dad hat. You don't have that with a low profile hat. Again, you've got that half inch from the seam up. So you only have about an inch and a half, um, maybe an inch and 3/4. So the design that I can put on this hat, I cannot put on this hat. Keep that in mind when you're doing your design work for hats. Your hat may not be able to accommodate the full design size of 2.5 inches or 3 inches or whatever it is you're trying to get on the front of that hat. Keep that in mind. Not all designs will fit all hats. Let's see. So Witty said he was new at embroidery, so just checking if things actually set up for caps. Witty says some are existing programs that I'll modify. New programs are rock starred by JA Digitizing. Justin is awesome. Okay, so um, I need to get this out there. Next week, I have a charity craft event that I am participating in. Um, it's an all day thing on Saturday. It's for a very dear friend who is experiencing massive medical, um, financial medical issues for treatment that she's having right now. You know, we we spend so much money on medical that we don't have a choice. So there's a bunch of us. We've gotten together. We put this event together. So I will not be here live and in person. Oops, I'm exposing myself. Live and in person next Saturday morning, but I am going to pre-record something. I'm going to pre-record and have it scheduled to play next Saturday at 10 o'clock. And what I'm going to do, I'll get to your question in just a moment. What I'm going to do is I am going to pre-record some digitizing, and I will talk as I'm digitizing, telling you why I did what I did, where I did. And um, I want to, if I can get it in there, I want to digitize two different files. I want to digitize a patch file and a simple hat file, um, which I will try to remember to address Woody's question in that. Woody wants to know if you adjust pull compensation for structured versus unstructured. I do not. Um, I have standard settings that I use when I'm creating for a hat, and we'll talk about that in my pre recorded show for next week. So, I hope you guys show up. It'll be there pre recorded. Um, it'll play, it'll be available on the site, it'll be available on my YouTube channel at Quick to Stitch Coffee and Conversation. Um, I think that's about it. Though, uh, oh, one more thing. Think about this. I know it's been kind of busy and kind of hectic lately. I still want to do a guest coffee and conversation. I want to put out there in advance, a couple of you might want to come in live on screen, and we'll have some coffee and conversation. Okay, time to go. I'm going to say goodbye now. And thank you. Thank you again for being here.
Wasn't that fun? Do you have more questions? Do you want to learn something new? Join me at quicktostitch.com for coffee and conversation, and we'll talk about it. Embroidery machines, designs, and business. Hope to see you soon. Bye